The LCS offseason period has had some of the spiciest changes we've seen so far, with teams making drastic changes to their rosters, and with huge figures like Bjergsen and Doublelift no longer playing, we're going to see some huge changes to the league in 2021. In today's video, we'll be going over each of the new rosters and organizing them into a tier list based on their relative power and explain the potential of each of these teams. The tier list will be divided into 4 different tiers. A tier being championship contender, B tier being middle of the pack, C tier which is lower end team, and then D tier, 10th place contender. So each team will be placed into a tier based on their projected performance in the upcoming season and the potential amount of upside each team has. This tier list is also based on my own opinions, so if you have your own projection for any of the teams, please feel free to leave something in the comments. The 2021 LCS season is likely going to be very different than normal due to the impact of COVID-19 on the budget of a lot of these teams. Revenues for a lot of the esports teams here are definitely much lower than normal, and it has undoubtedly been reflected in the player choices here. I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing though, because it has opened opportunities for a lot of new players that we haven't seen before, since a lot of the orgs have gone for budget or developmental rosters. Let's go over each of the teams. Starting off with 100 Thieves, their new roster is comprised of Someday, Closer, Demonte, FBI, and Huhi with Coach Zix. Some of you may think this is a pretty familiar roster, and it is. Everyone on this team except for Sunday was on the Golden Guardians roster from last year, and 100T basically bought out the whole team for a package deal and slapped in their all-star player Someday. When everyone saw this roster last year, they believed it was a legit 10th place contending team, but the team surprised everyone when they ended up doing pretty well in playoffs, ensuring themselves as at least a middle of the pack team. There have been indications of the roster wanting to stay together as a team, so it appears as though 100 Thieves wants to build on their success that they've had in the last year and keep building it with an upgrade in the top lane. This is definitely a strong roster to grow with, and there's a lot of potential with these players as well, but they would definitely have to overperform in order to compete with some of the premier organizations. I put them in B tier. Moving on to Cloud9. The arguable winners of the offseason, they've shifted around their budget of their players and are really banking on pushing themselves to the next level with their acquisition of Perks, who is arguably the strongest mid laner present in the West. They've also cashed out on their investment into Licorice back in 2018 and have swapped him out for Fudge. The rest of the roster is the same as last year, with Blabber in the jungle, Sven in AD carry, and Vulcan in support. With Perks leading the charge for this team for the 2021 season, they're looking absolutely stacked and ready to dominate not only the LCS, but also on the international stage. They were able to completely dominate the spring 2020 split, and although they fell off in summer, they are looking back to come stronger than ever. For the first time in years, they've also dropped Reaper and promoting Rainover to their head coach. He's had a lot of time under Reaper to learn the ropes of proper coaching fundamentals and is ready to lead this team to the success they need. This is an easy A tier team to me. Counterlogic Gaming have made some solid acquisitions, making their roster full of decent players. Ruin's been dropped in favor of Finn in the top lane. Wiggly's been swapped out for Broxa in the jungle, and Wild Turtle has taken over Stixay's spot at AD carry, leaving Polebelter and Smoothie the same to round out the roster. I don't know about you, but looking at this roster has given me this feeling of confusion because on paper, every player on this roster is a well-proven and experienced player, and the team honestly does not show any weak point in any of its roles. However, the issue here becomes about who is going to carry this team. None of these players are absolute superstars by any means, so there's no obvious win condition present here. This may not be a bad thing in the end because this could just mean that they're a strong team in general, but a lot of it will be coming down to how they work together. I'd put them in the B tier. Dignitas' roster has definitely taken the developmental approach, and they will struggle to compete with the teams that have bigger bankrolls. We've got Fake God in top lane, Dardoch in jungle, Soligo playing mid, Neo, formerly Asta, on AD carry, and Afromu on support. Basically, we have a few relatively unproven players being held with the leadership of Dardoch and Afro, but this team is definitely going to struggle with some star power. None of these players have had extreme amounts of success outside of maybe Afromu, but he hasn't been having too much success in the last couple of seasons, so we need to see an overperformance from both him and the rest of the team. This team is definitely going to be in the lower echelon of the LCS teams, so I'm going to place them in the D tier. Evil Geniuses tried to make a statement when they joined the league with a big bankroll and big dreams. While they haven't been able to show too much success yet, they are keeping their hopes high for the 2021 season and are putting in the adequate investment to back this up. Their roster consists of Impact, Svenskeren, Jizuke, Deathly, and Ignar. From what I've seen, it's kind of funny because it looks like they have these hard hitters in 4 of the players and then kind of ran out of budget when they acquired Deathly. No flame to him though. Regardless of this, I think this is a really consistent roster with players that have had incredibly high highs. Impact has been one of the best top laners in the region for years on end. Svenskeren has been doing well in the region since 2016, and Ignar has returned fresh from his visit to Worlds 2020. So to say that this team has the potential for some good upside is definitely an understatement. There's a lot of extremely experienced players here, and I think as long as they're able to find the best way that they can play the game and coordinate that accordingly, I can easily see them competing for the top. A solid A-tier team in my book. Let's move on to FlyQuest, who are coming hot off the press from a really strong finish in their 2020 season. As they're one of the smaller orgs in the league, they've definitely had to make some cuts to their roster this year, but are banking on some players to really carry them. With Licorice being that rock in the top lane along with Argentinian superstar Jose Diodo to rock their jungle, these two players are likely going to be the ones that lead the other ones. However, with the acquisitions of Palafox and Diamond, two players hot off their success in the academy scene, and having Johnson coming off a decent rookie year on Dignitas, this is a great recipe for a strong developmental roster. For this year, however, I don't think expectations are too high. C tier for me. Similar to FlyQuest, Golden Guardians have embraced the budget approach and are taking big bets on players that haven't had a chance to prove themselves just yet. Niles and Iconic, being the top laner and jungler respectively, are coming straight from Collegiate, and although they've had good success in this regard, there's a lot of big questions as to whether or not they'll be able to convert this on a professional level. Rounding out the rest of the team, we have a Blaze Olive at mid, Stixay at AD carry, and Newbie at support. With these 5 players, clearly the budget cuts from COVID have affected GG's ability to gather proven talent, so they're going all in on finding future gems in order to find more success in the league. But this is a C tier team to me. Immortals had a pretty lackluster 2020 season overall and have basically blown up the entire roster for a fresh start in 2021. Going from top to bot, we have Revenge in top lane, Xerxes at jungle, Insanity at mid, Raze at AD carry, and Destiny at support. Honestly, other than Revenge and Xerxes, I've barely even ever heard of these other 3 players, so there's probably a good reason for that, right? There's always the possibility that this combination of players just happen to be in the Power Rangers or something, but I'm not really banking on that. I'm putting Immortals into the D tier again. Now onto Team Liquid. They've been building on the great success that they've had in the past couple of years with some potential upgrades as well. We still have the rock solid players of Jensen and Core JJ keeping up a strong level of performance, with Tactical also staying on the lineup based on how well he was playing in the last year. On top of that, they replaced Impact with Alfari, one of, if not the best possible top lane pickup from Europe, along with Santorin, who's had a really great rise as one of NA's best jungler offerings in the past year. I don't think he's necessarily insanely better than Broxa, but he may mesh better with the team, which can provide Team Liquid with the international success they've been searching for. Team Liquid is for sure an A-tier team. To round out the league, we finally get to TSM. This team has probably made some of the best, but also some of the weirdest pickups to their roster, and this likely has to do partially with what's been available on the market, but also in an attempt to try out something different in order to finally get their team out of the group stage at Worlds. Here, all eyes are on their support player Sword Art, who has been their big pickup for the lineup. Coming to TSM straight from his 2nd place finish at Worlds, Sword Art is one of the few LPL imports coming into the LCS, and I'm personally very excited to see what he brings to the table. Rounding out the rest of the team, we have Huni in the top lane, Spica returning in the jungle, Power of Evil at mid, and Lost promoting himself from TSM Academy at AD carry. This roster is a very interesting mix of players, and I think TSM's approach here is to mix the experience that some of these players have in Huni, Sword Out, and PAE to elevate the rest of the team. TSM has of course taken a hit from Doublelift's recent retirement from the pro scene, but I think they can definitely return to their success with this set of players. They're an A-tier team in my book. So this is my current tier list with every projected team in the LCS. While some teams are looking to continue their success and are attempting to dominate the scene in the next year, a lot of teams have been taking harsh downgrades in their roster in attempts to get a good value proposition. Although these orgs didn't really have much other choice here, there's no denying that we might see some of the worst LCS gameplay that we've seen in a while, but that's still fine. Regardless, as new info comes up and new stories develop, I'll be sure to cover them to make sure you get the most up-to-date info. Stay fresh.